All right, welcome back, everybody. Got Lucas here with us again tonight, and we talk about a couple of generals that have got killed at Stones River. Is that right, Lucas?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about some generals that lost their lives at Stones River and two generals that we just don't hear about too much. They're not part of that higher command that most people identify with in the Civil War. And so these are some brigade commanders that were killed in at the Battle of Stones River. Brigade commanders are right in the thick of the fight. Division commanders can be at the front and can be killed, but it's much rarer than the brigade commanders. And so we see two. I just chose two, one from each side. Brigade commanders that were killed at the Battle of Stones River. One of them was Joshua Sill, and the other one was James Edward Rains.
Okay.
All right. Um, Well, Joshua Sill, he was born in Chillicothe, Ohio in December 1831, so he's a fairly young man when the war breaks out. But he obtained an appointment to West Point and graduated in 1853. He would spend 8 years in the Army. He was stationed as far away as modern day state of Washington, and he would actually resign from the Army in January 1861. This is during the secession winter. South Carolina has seceded in December. In January 1861, he resigns his command from the Army and he decides he's going to teach civil engineering at Brooklyn Collegiate and Polytechnic Institute. Um, and of course, reason he's teaching engineering is because West Point is a engineering school. It's one of the things you learn when you leave West Point. You have a good education in engineering. And so when the war breaks out just a few months later, he has to resign from the university and he will join the 33rd Ohio Infantry. And since he's been in the Army previously, he's asked to raise up these troops. And so he becomes the commander of the 33rd Ohio. During the winter of 1861, he and his regiment would suffer a lot of great hardships in the mountains of southeastern Kentucky. A section of the country that I like to read about and research during my own dissertation studies. And so moving through mountains over these roads that are just not capable of handling thousands of soldiers to be marching across them. It's an arduous journey for these soldiers to march into the mountains of southeastern Kentucky along the Cumberland Plateau. In that region, he fought some minor engagements, nothing overly significant. But he saw his first taste of battle in Kentucky. After that, he would be a part of the Union forces who occupy Huntsville, Alabama in the summer of 1862. So he's in your neck of the woods, at least
Yep.
kind of close. And when the Confederates began their campaign let's back up just a second. After Perryville, Confederates marched back into Tennessee, into East Tennessee towards Chattanooga. Then they attacked Murfreesboro, moved towards Murfreesboro, and we get the Battle of Stones River. Sill during that battle would be being part of Philip Sheridan's division, command a brigade in Philip Sheridan's division. And on the night of December 30th, and so we'll talk more about what they do at the Battle of Stones River, but on the night of December 30th, Sill and his men could hear the sound of artillery and infantry moving in their front. So they knew that the Confederates were actually on the move. They could hear soldiers talking. I mean, it was a scary moment for them. So when Sill hears all this, he goes to Sheridan's headquarters. And Sheridan's headquarters, kind of laughingly, is just a fallen tree, somewhere to sit down. And so he finds Sheridan's headquarters. He gives Sheridan the information, saying the enemy is moving in his front. Something's going to happen the next morning. They both go to General McCook, their overall commander, and inform him of the movement. But he thought that the Union attack that was supposed to happen the next morning on the Union left would stop any Confederates from making a major attack in their front. So he just kind of waves this off. Sill and Sheridan are not convinced. When Sill and Sheridan depart, Sheridan actually gives him 2 extra regiments to send to his brigade just in case an attack does come that next morning. During this interaction, Sill will mistakenly grab Sheridan's jacket when they leave his headquarters. And so during the battle the next day, Sheridan and Sill actually be wearing each other's jackets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Just a neat little tidbit of history there. Um, and just like Sill and Sheridan knew, the next morning the Confederates attacked. That was not a surprise to them. They knew what was going to happen. And because Sill was cognizant of all that movement in his front, he had strengthened his line fairly well, and his men had been positioned right inside of a tree line, and in front of them was an open field. And so when the Confederates are going to make their attack, he's got a perfect vision of the Confederates approaching them, and they will doggedly hold on to their position for multiple attacks by the Confederates. I mean, it is a drawn out fight with Sill's brigade, but he is holding on. He's a very capable commander, and his men love him. For one reason, he's right there in the fight with them. Unfortunately, during one of these assaults, he would be killed. And I wanted to read to you, just because I found it really interesting doing my research for my Stones River animated battle maps that are coming out, that came out this week and then for the next 2 weeks, depicting the first day's battle. Because I had read this account of his death, it was very powerful, and I wanted to read it on the show just to show you what happened that morning when he actually gets killed during one of these attacks. And this is coming from Lieutenant John Mitchell. That he's going to recount the moment of the death. He said, "At this critical juncture, a general charge was ordered, which was bravely responded to. Sill sent me along the line to aid in the movement. Hurrying back, I came across the brigade adjutant. He had just seen the general's horse gallop into the rear. In our search for Sill, we almost stumbled over his prostrate body. A bullet had penetrated his brain. He had tumbled from his horse without even a friendly arm to ease his fall. He lay unconscious and along, bubbling out his last breath through the blood that thickly flowed over his fair face and silky beard. Two stragglers were there, with difficulty persuaded to aid in taking his body in a blanket to a farmhouse nearby. Thus died a model of martial virtues, the gentle and chivalric Sill. This scene and its dread surroundings horrified me with war." With their commander dead, the Confederates are mounting another assault, and the blue line starts to fall back. But because of Sill and his brigade being able to hold those Confederates off, that gave Sheridan, Negley, and all these other commanders that make a brave stand what will be known as the slaughter pen, just a little bit further north of Sill's position. He gives them enough time to set up, sacrificing his own life. After the battle's over, his body will be sent to Chillicothe, Ohio, back where he was born, and buried there. He was just 31 years old when he died.
Let me ask you a question, or kind of a two-part question. One, why did they ride their horses on a charge? And two, when you got that, we talked about this before with command and control, when you've got that kind of fog of war there going right into a fight, is it really that important to have your commander in front other than to fire up the troops? I mean, because you really can't have control what's going on when you're that close, can you?
That's a multifaceted answer. The best reason you can give for having a brigade commander go out in front of his troops, or at least be on a horse, is so that his men can see him.
Okay.
You lead by example. You're wanting to be on a horse because you can be seen above the other people's heads. Again, the fog of war is pretty thick, especially for a private in the Army who's got a limited field of view. Being able to see your commander will give you a morale boost. Now, the brigade commander is not going to be out front while the men are firing in battle lines. He'll be behind. However, during this charge that he was preparing to make, that's the duty of an officer, is to be out front. And many generals would go out on horses. Not all of them. Some would some would dismount to make some charges. But the reason you ride a horse into battle is so that your men can see you. This inspires them, and miraculously, and I still would love to know why more brigadier generals did not get killed in battle. Many of them did, but I'm wondering why more didn't, because of them being such an easy target.
I always wondered that too.